Today's World on Wednesday slot is going to be filled with a game that I rate extremely highly on the Amiga. A game I've been playing for hundreds of hours in total over the years, and it's definitely one of my all-time favorites. Railroad Tycoon by Microprose. I'm going to run it in roughly the same way as I did with the Populous video, which is to talk through what the different settings do, what they affect, and make suggestions, give ideas to how the game could be played. It's not necessarily a guide, it's not necessarily telling you how to play, it's just how I prefer to play the game in many ways and just some general suggestions. But for now, I'll shut up so you can enjoy the quite funky introduction tune. So here we are on the main start screen, I think it's called, where you have the option to start a new railroad. You can load a saved game, or you can load the tutorial, which is very expertly covered in the manual. But for the purpose of this video, we are just going to start a new railroad. Then you have to select the region and the time period. Western USA, Eastern USA, Western USA, England, and Europe. Eastern USA is 1830, Western USA is 1866, England is 1828, and Europe is 1900. Unlike the PC version, which of course this game is a version of, you are not restricted by difficulty level in how long you can play. In all time periods or areas, you can play for 100 game years before you are requested or required to retire. But the different areas have hugely different economies, and because of the time setting, they also have hugely different even trains available to them. Eastern USA in 1830s, when the railroading took or got momentum in the US, and of course England 1828 was when the railroads or the locomotive officially was invented. Europe 1800 will run to the year 2000, and you can imagine that the trains will be trains that you are possibly familiar with, like Trikans, Vitesse, things like that, or Vitesse, whatever. I don't think the last S will, no, whatever. The French fast train, yeah. Sorry if I butchered the name, I'm very, very sorry. A lovely train, by the way. I've been riding one, absolutely amazing trains. I digress, which I'm very good at, and I'll try not to. While the gameplay is effectively the same in all regions because of the economies being different and because of the train availability being different, it is a different experience in all four areas. But for the purpose of this video, let's go to the railroad's birthplace in England, 1828. You have four difficulty settings, or four main difficulty settings, I should say: Investor, Financial, Mogul, and Tycoon. The main thing that the initial difficulty setting will dictate is economy stability, industry stability, how much you get paid for a carload of whatever it is you are delivering, and so on and so on. But unlike a lot of other games, and Microprose games specifically, you are not necessarily getting punished for playing at a higher difficulty level. It's not like a game like Civilization 4, where if you play on the highest difficulty level and you're unlucky, you get wiped out in turn 2. It can happen. Um, the game has not got that kind of difficulty where playing at a very high difficulty automatically means you're off to a bad start by default. But of course, it does make things more difficult, but in my opinion, also more interesting. And of course, the starting difficulty will dictate your modifier for your retirement bonus. So, for the purpose of this video, I will be starting on Mogul. That gives sub difficulty settings you can adjust, and I will go over them as briefly as I can, but they do require a certain amount of explaining, which of course I enjoy doing. So, first option, dispatcher operation or no collision operation. Dispatcher operation means that you have to use signal towers. The way a rail line works is that the tracks are divided into blocks of track. Once a train occupies a set block of track, no other train will be allowed into that block before the train has cleared the section of track to minimize or avoid collisions and that stuff. If you can set up your rail line effectively using signal towers, if you have the patience, which I don't, I will say that up front, you can make a super efficient train line. But if you get it wrong, first and foremost, it can be extremely sluggish, and secondly, you run a risk of trains colliding, which of course you don't want, because I mean, there's the two trains smacking into each other being bad for the people involved, but from a more gameplay point of view, people will stop trusting your railroad as being a safe service to use and will take their service elsewhere, and you can actually feel a massive depletion in available cargoes to move in case you have two or three collisions in a short amount of time. It is a price to pay, but as I said, if you can be efficient about it, then you can make a very efficiently running rail service. The other option, the gentle option, no collision operation. The cargo in this game is divided into freight classes, which are rated by time sensitivity, ranking from highest sensitivity to lowest. It is a mail, passenger, fast freight, slow freight, and bulk freight. Bulk freight is not affected by how long it takes to deliver it. It is the amount you deliver you get paid for. It doesn't matter how far it went, how long it took. It's ton for ton what you get paid for. Mail, it is a speedy delivery, that's all important. And the reason that I mentioned that for no collision operation is because while you do not have any potential collisions and can have multiple trains running on the same stretch of track, the freight classes come into play. The game will simulate that a train will move over to the side to let another train pass. And that is where the freight classes determine who's got priority over what. Bulk freight has got no priority at all. Everything else will be given higher priority than a bulk freight train. Slow freight will have priority over bulk freight, but fast freight, passengers and mail will have priority over slow freight, and so on and so on. So if you have a lot of mixed traffic using the same rail line, or the same stretch of track, I should rather say, you can find that some of your trains will be stopping an awful lot to let other higher priority trains pass. It is a small price to pay, I would argue, for not having to worry about signal towers and not having to worry about collisions. But on very, very busy stretches of track, it can lead to extreme slowdowns for certain train classes. Next one, the economy setting, complex or basic. Basic economy is sandboxing mode. Personally, I don't like it. I understand why it's there, but I am not a fan of it because I think the economy is what dictates the game. With basic economy, you can deliver any type of cargo to any station that's large enough to be considered a station. Which means that if you have a town that don't really care about steel, you can still deliver steel to them and they will pay you for it. Complex economy is where the meat of the game lies, and that is where if a town doesn't have a steel mill, it doesn't want to have coal because it's got no use for the coal. And the challenge is to find resources and connect them to destinations. Certain resources like coal can be converted to steel, which can again be converted to manufactured goods, which again can be taken to a port for export. And since the conversion rate is 1-to-1, so if you deliver 40 tons of coal, it will be turned into 40 tons of steel, which again potentially will be converted into 40 tons of goods. You can make quite a bit of a profit if you have a connecting line that supports a certain cargo type. You can also be completely screwed and have a lot of resources and nowhere to deliver them to, or a lot of potential resource receivers with no resources to deliver to them. But by and large, it is the more exciting way of playing, and it is the most rewarding, both as a player but also for your railroad. Friendly competition or cutthroat competition. I should probably mention at the start of the video, the aim of the game is to earn as much money as possible and get a fat retirement bonus. But, well, I've mentioned it now, but that I think for Tycoon games should be fairly obvious. That is the point of it. But you can have up to 3 computer-controlled companies competing with you. Friendly competition is just that. There's a stock market section in this game which I find to be, it's perhaps not super realistic, but it's a welcome addition, something that unfortunately was diminished further and further in later versions of Railroad Tycoon, and something that I felt was a huge loss for the later games, despite the fact that they were improved in other ways. I absolutely love the way the stocks are handled in this game. But regardless, you have stocks. You are a shareholders company, and with friendly competition, you can't invest in other companies and they can't invest in you, which is fine and dandy. Complex, I was about to say, cutthroat competition allows you to invest in other companies depending on your difficulty level. And, you can invest in any company, but you can only gain control over so many companies based on your difficulty level. That's what I meant to say. Sorry about that. But competitors can buy your stocks and you can buy their stocks as well. If you gain control of 50% of the stock or more, you effectively gain control of your competitor and they can do that to you as well. So you're opening yourself up for expansion, but you're also opening yourself up for vulnerability. The main reason I play with cutthroat competition is not because of that aspect, though. It is funny. I may be able to showcase messing with someone else's stocks, but from experience, I have found that you can have a very, very efficient rail line going, and you want to expand. Then suddenly one of your computer competitors connects to the station you're hoping to expand to. Then another competitor connects to another station, and the third competitor connects to a third station, and you're suddenly finding yourself being boxed in. Because it's friendly competition, no naughties are allowed, and you are effectively trapped. I've tried it a few times. It doesn't happen awful lot of times, but I've had it happen enough for me never ever to play with friendly competition again. Cutthroat competition allows you to lay track into computer controlled stations. They can do the same to you. It's not something they tend to do an awful lot. It seems a bit random when it happens, but by laying track into an existing station, you effectively force a raid war, a so-called union station. For the duration of the raid war, all revenues earned from delivering cargoes to said station is cut in half, and the local council will determine who they consider to be the better service. And that is a strictly vote-based ruling based on how many carloads you have delivered, that the city is interested in, of course, and how many carloads you picked up. If any of the two involved businesses win the majority of votes, which is 2/3 versus 1/3, 2 fiscal periods running, the council will declare that business to be the winner and force the other business to destroy all track within 6 squares of the station. Now, if you have a very strong competitor, you can, if you can find a weak spot, basically cut them in half, because the computer will just eradicate all tracks. But more importantly, as I mentioned before about being boxed in, it gives you a chance to break through. If you lose, it's an awful lot of resources you are spending, because anything you want to deliver as much cargo to that station as possible to win the votes, and if you don't win the votes, you have effectively been dropping off a carload after carload after carload at half profit. But for me, having experience being boxed in this way, at least I have a chance to punch through and break through being boxed in. The stock market I never found to be much of a risk because of the way I play. It was probably a bit longer than it needed to be, but I want to give the reasons for why I play with the settings that I do. That is sort of the purpose of this video. So, continue. Every game is randomized. The general layout of the area you're playing is going to be exactly the same. I mean, England's not going to suddenly change to a different looking island, but resource availability, industries, cities, they will be roughly in the correct geographical location. But you can have one game where London is a metropolis and another game where London is a two-house village. It gives an awful lot of replayability, even if you are fully aware of the layout of a certain area. So one game, the 2 stations you made a huge profit on even may be completely useless villages in the next game you play.